All right, welcome to Inside Music Curation. We are the team at Feed Media Group. I am joined here by my esteemed colleagues from our music curation team. This crew is busy all year long programming music for apps. And specifically, we program music for a lot of digital fitness apps. And so today, one of our favorite days of the year, it's time for us to wrap up the year and say what happened. What happened in 2023? What happened in music for fitness, and share all of our findings with you. We just published our report, the 2023 Workout Music Report at feed.fm, and we'll go over what we found. I think we've been doing this for a few years. There's some common threads and there's some new trends. So, I think the biggest common thread is that pop music is fueling digital fitness, right? Pop music is always our top genre, but pop music itself is a very evolving genre, right? There's a lot of trends that happen there. And so would anyone like to kick off and talk about what was happening in pop music this year and how that affected programming for digital fitness?
I'll go. I mean, I think when I was reflecting on my year of curating and also independent listening, I was reminded of the motto, "The future is female," and which is awesome, right? Like we could all use a lot more of that in our lives, especially at a political level. But I think when I reflect on my music listening this year, there's been a lot of female listening. SZA's album was really significant for me. I loved it. It was beautiful. A lot of it was slow and down tempo, so I didn't curate with it a lot. And then in terms of what was more, appropriate for curation, Olivia Rodrigo and Taylor Swift were really high in my listening. Taylor Swift just crushed it this year. All the hype about her is legit. And then on the hip hop side of the equation, and I'm a dedicated hip hop listener, and we celebrated 50 years of hip hop. We're finally seeing a groundswell of really talented, really diverse females on the mic, which is long overdue. So I'd say, in a nutshell, a lot of great female-driven music that not only was gratifying to myself, but we see it in the data that a lot of our end users find this to be highly motivating, like really appealing. Dua Lipa didn't release a lot of music this year, but a lot of people grabbed onto the few releases she did do, and they were banging those all year long. So that would be a nutshell kind of perspective from me, is that the future isn't female yet, but in terms of pop music, it's getting there.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the report, and we stream over 750 million songs a year, right? And so we've got a lot of data to look at. And if you look at the most streamed songs over 2023, 9 out of 10 were female artists. And that, trend continues to some of the other charts, but the most streamed songs, very, very female forward indeed.
Yeah, I thought it was fun to see a lot of crossover success within pop as well, where you're seeing a lot of elements of dance, some elements of hip hop. We've got our sort of first major Afrobeats single in Calm Down from Rema and Selena Gomez. And, I think that'll be huge to sort of set precedent going forward for new music, and it's growing its popularity.
I know last year was, heavy on the hip hop on the pop side. This year we saw more dance. Like, Mike, what does that mean when pop gets more dance?
I mean, I think, and I have a little quote in our report, but I feel like since nightclubs have reopened after post-pandemic, I think a lot of what is happening in dance clubs is sort of bleeding into the music that's being commercially released, whether it's pop or dance. I mean, everything's a little bit faster this year than it was last year. Almost sometimes I get a little nervous when I'm trying to curate with some of this really fast, 138 BPM stuff. I'm like, are people's hearts going to explode out of their chest? What? But I mean, that's, it's what's being heard in clubs. It's what's being heard on the radio. It's being heard everywhere else. So, you got to follow the trends to a certain extent.
Yeah. I think another thing that came up in the charts was, throwback. Throwback is one of our biggest genres, and it gets one of the biggest pieces of the pies. It's made up mostly of hip hop, but what does that throwback station look like, and what are the trends we're seeing there, and why do people gravitate to it?
I think there's we've seen an interesting move with social media and catalog tracks. So sort of older releases finding new life through social media, through finding younger audiences, all that sort of stuff. So it's equal parts, older demographics who want to hear the hits from, their golden era decades and all that, as much as it is younger folks discovering older music for the first time and getting to see some of that bubble up.
I think too, it's really cool to see as far as throwbacks. It's not just, the top 10 tracks from the 90s. It's the album tracks. It's the B-sides of the Britney track, the Unruly, all of the sort of, the songs that you would listen to when you were in middle school, right? For those millennials. I think we're seeing a lot of people really enjoy that sort of nostalgia when it comes to not just hearing like the big throwback songs of an era, but like going back and really digging deep to some of those, less popular songs at the time. We're seeing a lot of that as well.
And it filters into pop too, with being able to use interpolation to make new hits. David Guetta has done a lot of that this year, so lots of things sounding familiar on the airwaves.
That's the understatement of this conversation. That's all David Guetta did this year, I think. Just yeah. But it works. Yeah.
Like they say, if it ain't broke.
And there's the data that we see top level, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes, right? And we have a wide variety of customers streaming that have a very diverse range of audiences and end users. And Juan, I know you had some insights about, some throwback things and things that were being, received well in various stations that were pulling from some different genres and different times.
Yeah. Before I go into that, though, I would like to talk about throwback necessarily, right?
Yeah.
I think right now we're in a really cool time. It's a point of reflection, right? Throughout hip hop, we even saw throwback. We saw two of the biggest female MCs essentially do throwback music, kind of like in the vein of like Puff Daddy's like 99 style of throwback, right? Which is pretty cyclical, pretty like pop, how it rolls every 4 or 5 years, kind of expecting. But what's really cool right now is what's happening in the rock realm. We saw rock last year essentially get kind of like co-opted by hip hop to a degree, right? I mean, the media called it pop punk, but really it was just hip hopified pop punk, whatever. What's really dope about right now is all of this pop punk from the millennial age, right? Like 2000 to 2010, coming back in a super big way. It's indicative of something that's even bigger, right? Where it's like punk as a genre, as a rock genre, was never something that had a lot of roots, never really had a stable of artists that were necessarily performing and putting out music, 20 years down the line from their career. Now we definitely do. We have them showing up on, huge festivals. And it's indicative to our programming here. We've had 2 clients so far this year that have showed a lot of promise into pop punk programming, which I think is just indicative of where we're at right now. Mm-hmm. If you were to ask me 20 years ago, I would have been like, but here I am right now eating my own words, and it's dope.
Yeah, and I think, as music creators, I love to hear a little bit about, how you're making selections, and also, where you're getting feedback from, end users and clients that kind of fuel some of those trends.
I think, it's been really an exciting year for us because we've been doing this for a long time now, both collectively and individually. I mean, we're a pretty seasoned shop. We're lucky to have that much experience in the trenches. And so I think sometimes we come into meetings with, I wouldn't say presumptuous of exactly what a customer is going to want for their stations, but a pretty good sense of what they're going to be. And then a couple of our large customers that came in this year were really, entrepreneurial and creative and path breaking as far as the types of stations they wanted to do, which was exciting for us. We love that. That's more, we really get to dig into something new, like whether it was, Juan had a really great instinct to take the jock jams concept and how do we carry that forward in a way that's brand appropriate of sports jams, the stuff you hear in the arenas. Like we hadn't really done that. And now we have a couple customers that love their sports jam stations, right? It's a mix of, Euro house and hip hop and like poppy dance and stuff from like 20 years ago. So that's done really well. And then we have other customers that want viral hits. It's not a coincidence that Billboard launched its first ever TikTok chart this year. So it's actually like certified, TikTok is definitely, leading the charge on a lot of viral hits. And so just some really cool path breaking and new ways to bundle up music. And I think, we have another customer, one more example of that they wanted to go really deep into female music. And again, not to be, beating a dead horse, but I do love that. So we now have some customers that have a she rock station where it's all female powered rock music, which was really awesome path breaking. And we're still hoping that country will start to move a little bit more in the female direction, right, Claire? But they're kind of the latecomers, but they'll hopefully catch up one of these years on the fact that we want to hear more variety in our music, both in terms of thematically and vocally. We don't want to just hear the dudes all the time. So that's been really fun to not only be leading the charge with curation, but listening to our customers and being like, oh, that's a great idea. We should do that. We should do a pop punk station. We should do a she-rock station. Yeah, definitely. And we should, sorry, I'm going to hand off the mic to you, Mike Savage. Like other customers that are outside the typical fitness pocket that are doing functional wellness music. And they're like, we want nature sounds. And we're like, oh, well, that's a new one. We better get some nature sounds. And in the case of Mike and the work that he does, actually commissioning music to specs that we actually have of our own music that we can deliver to customers, not just from major label and indie catalog, but stuff that we ourselves go out and commission too. I mean, that may not be where you were going, Mike, but, doing a lot of commissioning too.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it's sort of semi-connected to, TikTok leading the charge. I mean, I found two of our, field recorders who may, go out and record nature sounds for us, for our clients. I found them on TikTok. Another one is one of the composers that creates music for our Feed Originals royalty-free catalog. And we, are friendly. I follow her on Instagram. I noticed that she takes a lot of hikes, right? So I said, listen, how about you bring up a microphone and kind of stick it in the bushes while you're going on your hikes and get some, some nature sounds for us. And, that turned into her actually going out and physically, getting stuff, ocean sounds, rain sounds, bird sounds. When the client asks for it, we go out and get it.
I think it's been really exciting because there's been an evolution in digital fitness, right? Like digital fitness has been around longer, and we're seeing a more diverse option of apps out there, and they have more diverse user bases. So that's translating into new stations, the functional music, the wellness music, mindfulness, meditation. It's really exciting to see the breadth of stations and customers that we get to work with.
I think the other aspect we've really gotten to lean into this year in providing nuance and curation is with our rating system. And we've had more customers requesting like, hey, we're concerned about language and content. And we're like, great, we've got a solution for this built into our curation process. So that just adds this other level of customization where customers can be really, nuanced with what the language and subject matter is on their stations.
Matt, can you talk a little bit, or Stens, about, what that rating system looks like and why that was created?
Yeah, I can jump in. So we have first, it's all human reviewed. We're not just feeding in, lyrics into some sort of analyzer. We have human beings who listen to every song, and they give it a rating of either clean, censored, or explicit, which just has to do with the actual words, the lyrics in the song. So if it has an explicit lyric, we mark that as explicit. If it doesn't have any, we mark it as clean. And if it has explicit lyrics that are, removed in the audio file or beeped out, it's censored. So it's very black and white. And then they also will review it on a G through NC-17 scale, kind of like a movie rating. And that's more it involves, if there are any explicit lyrics, it will be given a certain rating level or above, but it also encompasses the content, right? If there's talks of drugs or sexual content or violence, any of that sort of stuff. So we can really go one level deeper to providing customers that really nuanced take on not just like, I don't want to hear any bad words, but I don't want to hear I want my kids to hear any content that might also not be bad words, but mean bad things. So I think that's been such a huge breakthrough for us, especially it's gotten rolling in earnest this year. And I think for me personally, and I probably for the rest of the curators as well, it's really helped us with our confidence in knowing like, okay, if I see in our system that this has a clean PG rating, I'm can be very confident in that rating and know that there's not going to be any explicit words that have slipped through, right? So I think that's been a really big thing externally as well as internally for us.
Such an important piece for brands, I mean, your music is an extension of your brand. And I think, every company is different. And, maybe I know we've seen, the majority of businesses are in the PG-13 ratings where they feel comfortable. And we're able to give them some customization, right? Like a channel for kids or a channel that, maybe pushes the boundaries a little bit more. Yeah, very important piece when curating for businesses, for sure.
I want to make sure we represent this, and I think I could represent it to a certain extent. I'll set it off and then I'll hand it off, which is to say another part of the diversity of the year that's been exciting, because we're music gluttons. It's just like, I tell my wife sometimes, she's like, why do you want to listen to all this crazy stuff? And I'm like, I know it's kind of crazy, but it's just like, if you went out to eat every day of the week, you wouldn't always want to eat mac and cheese. And she's like, oh, that's true. So like, we want the much variety as possible of music. And it's been awesome with Latin music that not only do we now have like the Karol G's and the Bad Bunnies and all that, like making awesome reggaeton, but we saw a groundswell of other regional Latin and Mexican music styles this year. And Juan, do you want to talk about that briefly? Because that's something that, you've done a lot of really great thought leadership and writing and what that's about, and also educating our customers and the broader public of like what's happening here. Like it's exciting and wonderful, and it has a lineage. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Especially when it comes to Latin music. There's always like this focus, right? In any genre, right? Whether it's like jazz or rock, when it starts, there's always a focus. And Latin music, with the focus after, the 2000s, was really reggaeton, and heavily reggaeton. And throughout the last 20 years, you see like, reggaeton adopting like little things here and there. But those smaller genres like bomba or cumbia or bogotano, like all that stuff, like didn't necessarily jump out and become something that is necessarily pop or even like charting in the United States. There's this form of music called corridos music, which I have been super into. I actually, when I was working in a warehouse, that's how I got introduced to it. It was like one of the best musics to work and pick up boxes, fun as heck. Throughout time, it was just something that was just literally something that I found in a warehouse with a bunch of other Mexican-born people listening to that music, right? I'm Puerto Rican. I have no idea. Through that time till now, to see Peso Peluma put out literally like a Billboard charting record, and he's like out on MTV with a mullet. That's wild, right? Like that's super cool. And I think right now in Latin music, the focus is just going to change, right? As we like continue to stream, as we continue to discover, we're going to find the pieces of that main, pillar of what do I like about reggaeton, right? And then how does that transfer into what I like about, corridos or cumbia, or right, which I cannot wait to see this happen, but I'm waiting to see a corridos artist actually do something with a country artist, because the tonalities of both genres are very, very, very similar. And actually, in that Texas, oh man, I could go on and on. This is like, I love this. It's a passion. But to make this short, right? We're just going to see the focus change, and it's going to be very interesting. And will it all be fitness related? Maybe not, but I hope so, right? And in the case of corridos, we're seeing.
So much happening in music right now. Obviously we've really dove into the workout music report and what you all are doing on most days, but I want to make sure that we spend the last few minutes here, just talking about what you're listening to, what got you excited as, an expert in music curation, as a connoisseur of music, outside of what you're programming for other people, what got you excited in 2023?
Well, I won't be shy. So, I've already mentioned some of the artists that I spend a lot of time listening to. And it's also, I've got a young child in the house. I've got a 9-year-old who's really musical and into music. So, there's not many days that go by that we're not listening to some kind of Olivia Rodrigo and Taylor Swift. And thank God it's music that speaks to him, that's also substantive and something that I can really enjoy. And it's like it's a three-way benefit, because I get to use it in fitness too. He's like a user group of one. But when I'm not listening to that music, I spent a lot of this year actually going into the Wayback Machine, because I got the privilege of representing our company at a Hip Hop at 50 event on Capitol Hill, with other major streaming companies like Spotify and Apple Music, etc. And so I took that as an excuse to go even deeper on hip hop of like the last 50 years. And there's always artists in there, like even the classics that you don't know as well. And so a lot of that, but then to be able to blend those older styles of hip hop, which is now a rich legacy, into what's happening right now in hip hop, was like a fascinating, stew of different musical styles. So I spent a lot of the time, I guess, this year just kind of marinating in hip hop, which was, I'm not going to complain about that call to duty at all.
I think my year was spent listening to music that I had never thought I'd ever say out loud to anyone. But I've been listening to a lot of country music. I moved about halfway through this year. I moved to Nashville, right, home of it. And I think that what music is subjective, and the music that you like, I think, represents a place that you are in time when you're listening to it. And I think that, the album that really kind of got me in the feels this year is a great album by an artist named Steven Wilson Jr. This guy, he gives a master class in songwriting. I highly recommend it if you want to kind of take a nighttime drive, get in touch with your feelings. This is the album. It's called Son of Dad. I think it's about his dad who passed. Most of the songs are about that. But yeah, just a great album. And I know he's got a big 2024 coming, so we're going to be hearing a lot more about him. But it also kind of pushed me further into that sort of country world, but not so far away from the rock world that I normally swim around in. I mean, if you look at, I think, two of the top 5 most played songs on rock radio in the US are country songs from country artists, Jelly Roll and Hardy. And, I was able to kind of start sprinkling that stuff into some of the rock playlists for some of our Feed FM clients, and it works. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, I'll second the emphasis on songwriting. I also liked that album a lot this year. But it's kind of funny. I think some of it for like younger artists is sort of stemming from like a Taylor Swift effect, and just like how much she talks about the importance and integrity of songwriting and what that means. And you're seeing some more obvious artists like Olivia Rodrigo, who's like clearly been influenced by her, but also even Zach Bryan credits her with some of his sort of songwriting things. So I think that emphasis is really fun to see, of that there's, thought and artistry, as it can be easy to sort of distill music into like, only, the only hits or what will go viral. But there's, people seeking out real emotion and telling interesting stories and doing things in a different way. I'll say for me, the Boy Genius album, the record got a lot of play for me, and got to see them live. And they have an all-female backing band as well. So the total of, I believe, at least 7 to 8 women on stage. Which is just a really powerful message, I think, for women and girls making music today. So that's a fun one too.
I gotta say, yeah, I'm a Boy Genius fan, also Lucy Dacus fan, and I think my list of what I was listening to this year was a lot of females, but all across genres, right? Like Feist, who I'm a longtime fan, came out with a very different and brilliant album this year. And then on the other side of that, Bully is getting a lot of play for me this year. I'm really, really stoked about Bully and Madison Cunningham. So yeah, lots of ladies doing a variety. Corinne Bailey Rae went completely different direction and very exciting direction with her latest album. There's a lot of fun stuff going on out there.
I can go. I had an interesting year listening as well, outside of kind of the typical music we curate. Like Stan, I have a 2-year-old who's very obsessed with Disney, all things Disney music. I was looking at my Spotify Wrapped, and my top song was from a Goofy movie, Tevin Campbell, Eye to Eye. Got to rap Powerline. Come on, Powerline. It's a banger, but hearing it 5 times a day for the year really can't get out of my head. But I think kind of on the theme of what we talked about earlier with throwbacks and nostalgia, and maybe because I moved across the country as well at the beginning of the year, just kind of going back to, songs and stuff that I was listening to when I was, in college. And at the time I was studying jazz and was really into this group called Kneebody, Kneebody. It's this really awesome kind of instrumental jazz fusion rock group. They do some really cool stuff musically where they can communicate without talking and change songs on the fly, and just it's really awesome. They were really big at the time in LA when I was kind of coming up, and really good guys. So I went back, kind of started listening to hey Junie, random songs that I used to love. So that was a lot of fun. And then kind of on like the style of music that I think will always work is that sort of funky disco, pop music. And one of my favorite artists is Chromeo. They've been doing it for a long time. Got to see them live here a couple months ago. They're just so much fun, like not serious, just sounds good. They played live. The singer was great. Like just a fun show, which I think is important now too, just to like go to like a nice medium-sized venue and just like have fun. It was a blast.
So I listened to a lot. So for me to come up with like a favorite was tough, but I definitely did. So I love Hayley Williams. I find her to be one of the most influential female singers in probably the past 20, maybe 30 years. I find the work that she does in Paramore to be, bar none, some just excellent song crafting. This last record, This Is Why, was incredible. It was mature. It was thoughtful. It was talking about a variety of different, like, kind of like life things that happen as we grow older, but like in such a bouncy way that was very satirical and also like tongue-in-cheek, which I loved. And then as far as the other stuff that I like, Boris in Uniform put out this amazing collab album called Bright New Disease, which was great. And as well as I just got, you know what, I love Junior H, and I love the album, or I think it's a mixtape. It's called Sad Boys for Life 2. It's a banger. But it might not be for everybody. It's a corridos album, but it's like in the style of Mazzy Star. So if you're down to get real in your feels, hit it up.
Well, we're going to have to drop some links for these for sure in the comments. That's a lot. We've got a lot of homework, I feel like, after this conversation. Thank you, guys. Thank you for, all that you do, bringing music to these apps and to the end users, for distilling it down, sharing your insights. I always feel a little bit smarter hanging out with you guys and talking about music. Just to wrap it up, does anyone want to share 2024, what you think we're going to see more of?
Tonight, I'm seeing Blippi with my son. I don't know if anyone's on the Blippi phenomenon. I'm in blue and, orange. I'm ready to go. Blippi is going to be huge for the rest of our lives.
All Blippi, all the time.
We're going to, we try not to be in the habit of casting shade here, because everybody's taste in music is valid, right? And we're in the habit of taste making to the end user's preferences, whatever they may be, even if we really don't like that song. Although I will say that in the world of hip hop, just to bring it back there for a minute for me, like, I think Drake may be finally kind of running out of things to say. So I'm excited to hear the continuation of some of these new young artists making, interesting, different stuff. Like, I think one of the reasons that's a lot, and I don't mean to put them into all into the same box. That would be inappropriate and a gross simplification. But a lot of the female MCs have come in with a lot more high-powered and energetic hip hop that's bringing us out of the kind of like languid, drug-induced, music that hip hop's been dominated with, like a lot of trap music over the last few years, which a lot of that's awesome. But I think the balance of that, I'm excited for more like upbeat, energetic hip hop. I think we're kind of like, we're lacking some real, like, one or two people are just like killing it in hip hop right now. Maybe it's because Kendrick Lamar's taken a little well-deserved break, but I'm excited to see like some people making big moves in hip hop, not just kind of like continuing on with the trap thing and kind of like this, that, and the other, but some kind of more revolutionary things. And I think that's a prediction that might really happen in 2024, is to see a couple hip hoppers just really break it out and like own that space more fully.
I'm excited to see, this is kind of artist specific, but I think falls within our fitness category pretty well. But I think Tate McRae is going to kind of be maybe 2024's Dua Lipa. I don't know that her album comes out this week and has got a lot of, upbeat and dance friendly tracks. So I could see her dominating a bit. And I'm also sort of hoping to see, I think Noah Khan has had a big influence on some more like folk pop crossover, but also like is able to be, both a little fast tempoed and slow tempoed, which is hard to do. So I think that'll be cool to see as well.
I'm actually interested to see and I touchy subject, I guess, but as AI progresses, I'm interested to see in 2024 how artists use it to their advantage, right? There was what's his name? Lauv, is that how you pronounce it? Lauv. He, made a version of his album with him singing in Korean using AI to work that album to the Korean marketplace. I think Sia just used AI to make a soundscape version of her Christmas album. So I feel like, as sort of scary and AI is going to take over everything as people feel, some artists are going to embrace it and use it to their advantage. And I'm looking forward to hearing, what they come up with.
Yeah, I was just going to add, speaking of Korean, I think more K-pop next year as well. We didn't really talk about it, but New Jeans, Blackpink, they've started to have some charts. So I think we're going to see a lot more of large K-pop supergroups coming over.
Yeah, not to steal your thunder, but I mean, I think there hasn't been as much male pop that I've been seeing and hearing. And it's partly like there's just like a void there, right? And the K-pop, singers have come in, they're like, that's fine with me. Like BTS is on hiatus and all those guys are coming out and just making pop bangers that are like, I mean, honestly, music is music. I don't necessarily know what they're saying all the time, and that's great and that's fine, but that's super inspiring, super great music. Pop is pop, and I think that the K-poppers have really mastered the craft, right? And we're going to see a lot more of them, coming out and taking big parts of the Billboard charts too.
Well, all around exciting things coming, we're sure. Follow along with us, at feed.fm. We've got a blog. We're here on Inside Music Curation once a month. We will continue to bring you all things music curation, including trends and genres and what's going on behind the scenes. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you again, music curators, amazing colleagues and friends. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.